Well, welcome to Front Porch Friday and our third installment of Marriage on the Rock. I'm here with my good friend Susan Gadd, and we've been talking about marriage, of course. And I hope you've watched the other videos in the series. If you haven't, you sure can on the Glow Girl blog. But in this session, Susan, tell me, what are we going to be talking about?
We're going to talk about termites.
Termites. All things? What do you mean? What do you mean?
Well, believe it or not, just like our homes can have termites, our marriages can have termites too. And termites are really notorious for doing damage before we even realize that they're there.
Okay, that's right. You begin to get into the eaves of the house and begin to look, and all of a sudden there's far more damage than you think there is. And so we're going to start in this session by talking about what? Termite number one?
Termite number one is unresolved anger.
All right, unresolved anger. Termite number one. We're going to talk about that today here on Marriage on the Rock. Tell me about unresolved anger, Susan.
Unresolved anger is a serious termite. I think one of the reasons it's so serious is because it has a tendency to blind us to the truth.
Wow.
The truth about our situations and mostly about ourselves. A lot of times when people are in the process of getting a divorce because their marriage has ended up on the rocks, they'll tell you that the divorce was caused by things like finances or in-laws or the problem with parenting or irreconcilable differences. I mean, they go on and on and on. But I think those are symptoms of the real problem. And the real problem, more times than not, I really believe, is unresolved anger.
Unresolved anger, termite number one. Well, Susan, tell me this. What is it like to live with someone with unresolved anger, someone who hangs on to old issues and anger?
Lori, I like to compare it to trying to garden in a minefield.
Ooh, gardening in a minefield. That
Yeah.
is an explosive thing.
Yeah, you know, you can work really, really hard to make something beautiful, to plant flowers. But if you're gardening in a minefield, you never know. You never know. And two people can have a halfway decent relationship, honestly. But at the same time, you'll just never know what will set a person off or when they'll go off.
Gardening in a minefield. Ooh, unresolved anger. How can you really know if unresolved anger is really an issue in your marriage? What are the clues?
Well, I think the main clue is if the reaction is out of proportion to the problem, then you've got a bigger problem.
Okay. Little bitty grievances turn into big giant explosions.
Right. You know, even couples that have been married a long time and are fairly good at resolving conflict, sometimes will have one issue that just never seems to get resolved. Just can't seem to work it out.
Yeah.
And I have found that the problem is usually not the problem.
Okay, the problem's not the problem. It sometimes goes back deeper to the past, maybe even before the predates the relationship, right?
Exactly. It does.
Okay, so it can be something from ages and ages ago.
More than likely, something or someone in the present is triggering a memory of something or someone in the past that has caused you pain.
Okay, so when those overreactions occur, when minor issues are at hand, you can sometimes look at that as a clue to say maybe there's an anger issue that predates even the relationship, or it's a circumstance that happened in somebody's life that has reminded them of an old situation that sets off that anger. Can you give me some examples of like unresolved anger and how that relates to your past and comes into your present?
Unresolved anger has a way of freezing your emotional maturity at the level it was when the offense occurred.
Okay.
For instance, say that your parents were divorced when you were 12.
Okay.
And it was a very painful, frightening, hurtful experience, but no one ever helped you work through it. And so you got stuck at the emotional maturity level of a 12-year-old. That's a horrible thing, but what's even more horrible is that 12-year-olds make lousy husbands and wives. You know, unresolved anger is usually about unhealed wounds. And for instance, I've got on a long sleeve shirt today. I could have a really bad wound underneath the sleeve, and it wouldn't be visible to you. You wouldn't even know it was there unless you got too close and you bumped into it. And then I'm going to overreact because you've hurt me. And that's what happens to people that have unhealed wounds, that have unresolved anger in their lives. They can go along through life looking fairly normal, but when people start trying to get close to them, it hurts. And that's when you have an overreaction.
Okay, brings back all of that stuff from those past hurts and things that have not been resolved in your life.
And you know, say that as a girl, you grew up in a home where your father was very authoritarian and very harsh, and you as a married woman can be standing in front of your husband and he can say something or look at you a certain way, and it triggers those things in the past that caused you so much hurt with your own dad. And all of a sudden, you're not a married woman standing in front of your husband. You're a little girl standing in front of a daddy that she's afraid of.
Okay.
And so you have this overreaction, and your husband doesn't even know what he said.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what he did. Or maybe as a little boy, your mother was very critical of you, and you couldn't do anything right. You couldn't please her. And so your husband says, your wife says, well, you forgot to take out the trash.
Yeah.
Well, you're not all of a sudden a married man having a conversation with your wife. You're a little boy standing in front of a mom that you just can't please. And so you blow up, but your wife has no idea why.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's unresolved anger.
It can affect your present, those past unattended to hurts.
And most of the time we don't even make the connection.
Oh, it's sad. But Susan, isn't there a time to be angry? Doesn't the Bible tell us that there are times that God would want us to be angry? How do we deal with anger?
The Bible is really clear, Lori, in Ephesians 4:26. It says that it's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to stay angry.
Okay.
And when we choose to stay angry, that's when the problems begin. And it sounds like an oversimplification, but all of this, all of life, all of marriage, it really is a choice. It's a choice. I can choose to forgive and to give it to God and to let go, or I can choose to hold on and to feed it and to give birth to something that will end up destroying my life.
So Susan, when it comes to unresolved anger, what does it mean to have a marriage on the rock when we're talking about unresolved anger?
Well, once again, having a marriage on the rock means that you're committed to doing things God's way. Not your way, not leaning on your own understanding, and certainly not the world's way. The world's way is to tell you you have a right to be angry.
Get even.
Get even. Seek revenge. But God says you can get better. You don't have to get bitter. And deal with unresolved anger. Forgive it and give it to God.
Susan, thank you so much. This is, as we've done this unresolved anger, I can think about years ago in my own marriage when I especially was the first few years of marriage. I didn't know how to deal with anger. And I would stuff it, and it did explode from time to time, and I'm grateful to say that I've gotten better at it, and I hope a lot of you will get better at it as well, that you'll learn to not let the sun go down on your wrath, that you'll deal with things before they become bigger things and before it becomes bitterness in your life, because God does want to use those things, those ways that we rub up against each other in marriage, when we get close to each other, and even when we begin to rub up against past hurts and things. He wants us to take it at that moment and to allow it to make us better, okay, to say, this is something that it's not you, it's something deeper, and to work on those things. So I want to ask you, are you hanging on to any unresolved anger from your past? Are you bringing it into your present? Girl, you need to deal with that. You need to get along with the Lord and deal with it and let Him just search your heart. You need to work on some forgiveness, and you need to talk to your mate about it, okay, and be really honest. And sometimes that may mean opening up things that your mate doesn't even know about you, okay? And that will help you grow better and more intimate in your relationship, not only with the Lord, but in intimacy and in fellowship and oneness with your mate. Well, next week we're going to continue our series, Marriage on the Rock, and we're going to talk about termite number 2, aren't we, Susan? Termite number 2. So we'll see you right here next week on Front Porch Friday, Marriage on the Rock. Thanks so much for sitting with us. Bye, girls.
Bye.